Brian, will you take roll, please?
I would be happy to. Amanda Aird, Jim Barnes,
Yes.
Dahe Chen,
Here.
Daniel Christensen,
I think I see the face, but I'm not hearing any words.
Here.
Ah,
thank you, Daniel, gotcha.
That was the headset this time. See?
Nate Early,
Here.
Jennifer Link Rashko,
Here.
and Jeff Redmond.
Present.
All right, we're all here and ready to roll. First order of business is to approve last meeting's minutes. Does anybody have any corrections or additions to the prior minutes? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Jennifer. Can I get a second?
I'll say it.
I think we got a second there. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand for the camera.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, minutes are approved. Mike, just before everybody got on, or you talked a little bit about the agenda, which was basically, and again, I'm not sure if I missed it, I just didn't actually see one. What I had kind of written down, I think it followed consistent with what you were saying, Mike, a little bit, but just since we haven't really touched base, is I thought we would take a look at first at the Parks and Rec Board duties and responsibilities per the section 2.301 and 02. Then take a look at the department goals and projects items that you had sent out, Mike. And then take a look at the document that I had sent out with a summary of my conversations with the board members and staff's comments on those. Here's how I thought we might proceed for the day. Does that fit okay with what you got, Mike?
I can tell you what I've got, and I don't know if you can always change the agenda, I believe, by making a motion to add something or change the agenda, but all I have is I'd like to think it's department goals, but it says director's goals. And then it says discussion of 2021 board goals. And that's the only two items I have except for board comments at the end.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing different than what I said. It's just more about maybe just a little more detail on that.
Okay.
I think though, what I would like to do is first talk about the board purpose and board duties and responsibilities to help frame up the conversation that comes after that.
Okay.
So doing this remotely is a little bit tougher, but just to kind of reviewing on the one email that that Brittany sent out on February 9th included the what is this called? Parks and Recreation Advisory Board operating guidelines, and in there it talks about the Wilsonville City Code and section 2.301, the purpose, and then 2.302, the advisory board duties and responsibilities.
I may interject really quick. I do have that info on a slide if you'd like me to share my screen and pull it up.
Oh, sure, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I guess I could share my screen too, yeah. So if you take us down to section 2.301.
Sorry if that was misleading. This is what I have as kind of the outline of the purposes here. I don't have the entire document, yeah. Although I probably could pull it up.
Let me.
You're looking for the purpose, Jim, that section?
Yeah, I got it. I can And if I remember how to share my screen and get onto the right part, I can do that. I'm not sure what I just did there. Working at home on a Mac is a little different than my usual PC. All right, well, I've done something to mess up my, oh, here we go. Maybe. Brian, what are you seeing? Are you seeing my screen or are you just seeing all the people? Can't hear you, Brian.
Jim, I see your screen that does have the purpose and the duties and responsibilities.
Okay. So the purpose was pretty much given in the email that came out in terms of taking initiative in planning of present and future parks. And Mike talked a little bit about that in his email, and he'll probably talk about it in a minute. I wanted to also focus a little bit on this section 2.302, where it talks about advisory board duties and responsibilities, where we talk about giving due attention and study to recreation park service as reflect the welfare of the people of Wilsonville. I guess you guys can kind of read this, but a couple of things I wanted to point out was serving as a sounding board for the department administrator and staff to test their plans and ideas. And I think that's an important part where, as you know, we have our master plans, and the master plans cover, you know, literally hundreds of individual projects and items that can be done. At the end of the day, the next part of once you go through the master plan is securing funding and prioritization of the projects. I think that's where the board has an opportunity. You know, it's an advisory board, carries no, authority per se, but it's an opportunity. I think when we want to be the voice of the community, this is an opportunity to advocate as we go into the budget cycle each year and in the 5-year planning, an opportunity to advocate for prioritization of those items in the master plan, whether they be new projects, maintenance projects, what have you. And then also on recommending policy. And so to the extent we think there needs to be any new policies or ideas or tweaks, you know, that's enough. These are things that we have an opportunity to be a voice for. And I think one of the biggest things that we can do is just be an advocate and keep bringing ideas forward. And if there's things that we think that the community wants to prioritize out of the master plans, to advocate for those accordingly. And I think you see some of those, particularly in like the Kayak launch, is something that's been a long running goal and objective. And you see that in both the city council goals and the park department goals. Okay. With that, Mike, I'll let you, let's see, now my screen is all messed up. I want to unshare. Brittany, can you take control back? I'm having some technical difficulty here.
Yeah, let me try.
I found it. Okay, I stopped sharing. All right, Mike,
Yeah.
I'd like to go through the department goals.
Yeah, we sent out I think it was a 2-page document. What do you think, Brett? 2-3 weeks ago, I believe, that on one side was basically telling me about council goals, telling me about this year, fiscal year, how the revenues and everything have been affected by COVID-19, and kind of what we're looking for in the future, different projects, couple different projects. And I want to also mention, Jim, what you said came out in our meetings over and over. We talked about this a few times, the goals for us and the goals that the board might have is being advocates. That word came up all the time, which I think is hugely important out in the community, and also like being more eyes and ears for us out in the community. So when you go to different functions or kid events and things, and people might say, you know, why don't they have this, or why don't they have that, or maybe they could add this. Those are the kind of things, if you brought forward to us, are valuable. And again, not saying we can do them all, but it's nice to hear what the community wants. And you know, with all of us together, there's a lot more people out there and in a lot more diverse areas rather than just the staff here. So and on the other side of that was basically what's in the budget book. It's kind of the five, I guess it would be the 5 areas that we concentrate on department goals. I don't have to read it to you, but if you don't have it in front of you, those 5 were stewardship of the environment and natural resources, safe livability and engaged community, thoughtful, inclusive built environment, art, culture, and community amenities, and expand and maintain high quality infrastructure. Those were the 5 areas, and that also comes from City Council. And then there's many bullet points underneath each one of those. Again, I don't want to read them to everybody because that's mundane and you guys can read them yourself, but I guess I'd go from there and see if Brian wants to add anything, or Erica, and also if there's any areas you guys want to concentrate on, like you have questions on this, or what does that mean, or how did that get on there, or whatever. I'd rather go that route than just, like I said, read these to you, and I don't know if that means anything to you if I just read them out loud. So.
Jim, I think if I may,
Yes.
I think I would just drill down a little bit more on what Mike's saying from a goal perspective, and say that from a programming viewpoint, you know, obviously COVID has impacted us quite a bit as far as what we can do. So moving forward, it's going to be about how we can get folks back out to our programs. Obviously, the limitations by the state are impacting that, which as a result have impacted our revenues. But I think programming wise, we're looking to be creative. Eric has done a great job of virtual and interactive programs while people can social distance. So I think that's one piece. And then from a project perspective, just trying to be sure that this year, I mean, the guidance we have been given is to be as fiscally responsible as we can be, given the downturn in revenues this past year because of things. So being sure that the projects that we look at are those that are, you know, either in a situation that they're not up to standard at the moment, or are a safety issue, or failing infrastructure. So being sure that we connect on those pieces that need an immediate fix, as opposed to looking to add too many new amenities that we don't have a secured funding source for.
On the department funds this year, from a dollar perspective, how much do you think the revenues were down?
Oh, well, I don't know. I would say anywhere between, some had 0. I mean, anywhere between 70% and 80%. Erica did really well on some sport camps and pulled some money out of those. Got those going a little bit. Brian did really well with some activities from Brad, who's our trainer. Got a little bit of revenue going there, but obviously we had no revenue in the nutrition side because all the meals were delivered, so nobody's there. And most of the Erica's contract classes didn't bring in revenue. The only positive to that is if Erica doesn't run the class, we don't spend any money either. So we offset that by not having money come out of our expenditures because we're not paying instructors, but we're not bringing in that extra percentage that we usually have either. So I'm ballparking it. We've met on it. We put in for next year to reach 70% of what we requested last year or budgeted last year. I don't know if that's aggressive or conservative. Again, it's really a kind of an unknown. But I think that's about ballpark wise what we came up with. Like I said, you could look at different ones and we'd have 90% that we missed out on. You could have others, we have 50%. So I'd ballpark it at 70% of revenues maybe came in.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to understand what's, you have some programs that are self-funding. You don't do the program, you don't get the revenue. So, it's primarily what your rentals of the park that brings in, net revenue.
And that was the biggest shortfall right there because we just couldn't rent most of
So is
those
that
out. I mean,
20,000, 100,000?
I might even have that here, Jim, if I can dig it up real fast.
Mike, can I ask a question?
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Is there something in the city charter that prevents capital fundraising or that type of means? And is there an obligation if you were to say raise capital funds that you have to have adequate O&M funding built into your budget to substantiate the use of those funds? I don't know if that makes sense, but if you don't have capital funds to say build, I think, I'm looking at this sheet here, a kayak river access thing. There's ways you can do a capital campaign to with the community as an amenity. A lot of places do that, but you still have to have O&M funds to maintain it as the new liability for your staff and whatnot. I'm just wondering if there's a creative way to kind of counter the lack of revenue and funding because of the times we're in to because these things, there's a development cycle. It takes several years, and can you at least do some of the work, pay for some of the work, engineering work, things like that, through this idea of fundraising, crowdsourcing it?
Yeah, I think I might throw Dustin out here too on this one, but I think for us, we look for donations as fundraisers for like more activity type things. We're not looking for people to build a kayak launch. I mean, we can always get volunteers to help once we're able to get volunteers again and get that going. Where Dustin's crew might need people to help build a trail or enhance something. But as far as seeking out monies to build that, I've never seen a city do that kind of thing. I mean, you look for grants, you look for bonds, you look for volunteers, and you look for our staff to do it. Like if you look at the dog park that was built down there, our staff did almost all the work. I mean, they did pretty much all the work down there, which saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if we're able to get our staff to do that, but of course they got their daily duties to do that. But maybe if you get volunteers to help them, that would work. I don't know, Dustin, do you have any input on that?
Yeah, I think, I mean, if I'm hearing what you're saying right, I mean, you're talking the securement of a large amount of funds. Say that kayak launch is $10,000. Can we crowdsource $10,000, donate it to the Park and Rec department, and then secure a kayak launch with those funds? Is that kind of what your thought line is there?
In essence, I think, yeah. But I mean, I'm thinking that a kayak launch is more than the type of work that you would have volunteers do. I think there's some engineering work. There's a lot of dynamics there, and maybe that's a bad example. But I'm just thinking there are things that are costly that would require some capital that may not recover for a while. But
yeah, and we're in the process of digging through with the help of legal, who's pretty strapped with some other things right now, but trying to really find there's a document out there that exists for park donations or the city donations, and kind of maybe spells out some of this better. So I don't really know if we're in a really good educated spot to speak to what the city's overlying policy is on those things, but it's something that we're trying to look into, from small donations of disc golf baskets has come up to larger donations of crowdsource funding or whatever else that may include. And then, like you spoke to, the key to that would be, and it's with any project, ensuring that if we do stand something up, whether we fund it through the city or through some other means, that we do have that O&M overhead, the team in place, the knowledge in place, the parts in place to take care of it from beyond that, installation. And it's great to get these things, but we have to ultimately upkeep and take care of them. So unless somebody else sees it otherwise, Mike, Brian, Erica, Brittany, I think a lot of our fundraising donation stuff is kind of to be decided based on this document that we've heard exists and just haven't been able to source with the help of legal yet.
Cool.
All right, thanks.
Hey, Jim, getting back to the revenues, I
Yeah.
can just give you a really brief. All I have really right now is this fiscal year, so I can give you from July and into January where we're at. I don't have the prior, but it does spell a picture, and that is that I can tell you, like park reservations, we've taken in $13,000 and we budgeted to bring in 115.
Okay,
So that's part of the downfall.
so it's
that's
about
kind of where
80,000-$90,000.
Yeah, and so right now we've brought in 12% of what we said we'd bring in. So
I just wanted to
Obviously-
put some context to, when you say revenues are down a lot, is that depending on what organization you're in and what you do, a lot is 15,000 or a lot's $1.5 million. It just,
right. Well,
Wanted to
and
give some context.
class registrations we've only taken in 4%. So again, because we just can't run them, there's no place to put them, and you can't have that many people in the room, and on and on and on. So,
but you're also able to you don't have to pay the instructor either, which is not good for the instructor, but it's net zero.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Moving forward, moving forward, is there a chance that we could take some of these classes that were planned? Can we take them virtual and take some of the interactive programs and turn them into maybe drive-through events?
I
that
can
we
have Erica
can
and
charge
Brian.
for those?
I can have Erica and Brian speak to that. We've done that. Brian's had quite a few drive-throughs, as has Erica. We even had drive-through with like free pumpkin giveaways. Erica's had numerous virtual programs going. They're not revenue generators, but at least it's still giving the community things to do. So we've been trying to do as best we can with those. Brian even had another drive-through. I think it was scheduled for, was it tomorrow?
Yeah.
And he's moved it because of the weather, because I'm not sure we want the seniors, which I am one of, driving in that kind of weather as a drive-through event. So he's backed it off for a week. I think it's on the 18th of next week. But and again, if you guys have more ideas on that, please let us know on those.
Well, most of those programs, as you said, are free. Can we change them into programs that are revenue generating?
We have a few. I know, again, I mentioned Brad a minute ago. He's been doing some classes, and he's actually had some people face-to-face, just less people, and charges those. Erica, I don't know if you want to talk on that or.
Yeah, so primarily a lot of what we've been doing lately has been free, just because I'd say the majority of it is something I don't even know, not to say that the quality of the program is low, it's just something I don't know if I'd feel comfortable charging for it yet. It's like, it's literally me like doing crafts on video, which I feel like we're charging for. And then we have a number of our fitness instructors. We have an in-house, well, she's one of our admin or our program coordinator, but she was making yoga videos, but she didn't feel the need to make any money off of them. So we thought that was another free resource we could provide the community. As exercise classes go and doing virtual signups, it's something we've kind of shied away from. And I don't think I think it's worth exploring again, but we are running into some issues with music licensing and being able to have the instructor have music in the background, which was, kind of an odd hurdle to get over, but it was something that we were facing. We're also coming to terms with where the instructors would host the classes. If our community center is closed, we weren't going to be able to have them in there to host the virtual class other than our in-house fitness specialist, Brad. So we were kind of, do we want all of our instructors in their living room, hosting a virtual class, that sort of thing. Yeah, I don't know if Brian has anything else to add, but the other piece of it was what, and maybe this is just us or me thinking the way that I do, but if you've heard of, like, for example, yoga with Adrian, it's like a famous yoga person who's doing virtual yoga online already. So we were struggling to like try to figure out what our instructor could provide that isn't already a virtual resource that's out there.
Right, right.
But yeah, I'm definitely open to suggestions. And I think if this continues, it will definitely be something that we'll probably explore again.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
And maybe for Jennifer might already know this, but I think, Erica, on your programs that you charge for, they're really not profit centers, right? They're really basically, the revenue covers the cost for the most part.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
I did want to walk through a couple of things on the department goals that Mike sent out. As I look through them, there's a number of items there that cross over into what the board has expressed interest in. And I'll just kind of throw out one idea for people to think about, is that from a board goal perspective, a lot of what I talked about with each of you individually or is on prior board goals are actually already in the staff department goals. One thing we might consider is that we basically just support those, or maybe there's a couple in particular we want to support, but there's a lot there, and a couple items I wanted to bring out. And I guess the question to the board, does everybody have the department goals that Mike sent out? Is there anybody that doesn't have them?
I have them.
I have them.
All right. So under like stewardship of the environment and natural resources, talked about organizing multiple annual park cleanups, and Mike has touched base on that. And also down, I think there's one about volunteerism. And so trying to get more people to volunteer is something I know that Jeff was particularly involved or interested in. And so those are goals that are already within the park department goals. Under the safe, livable, and engaged community, there's support innovative recreational and cultural programming and events. And at the bottom, under expand and maintain high quality infrastructure, is the creation of a nature play area in Memorial Park. And Jennifer, I think some of that might lend itself to what you were talking about in terms of looking at some environmental programming.
Mm-hmm.
And those, maybe Mike or Brian can talk about that a little bit later. But I think in my experience in listening to Mike and Brian and Erica talk, trying to partner with the schools has always turned out to be harder than you might think. Here I see my note under safe, livable, engaged community. The second bullet is maximize the use of volunteer labor throughout the department. And so then, as Mike was saying, the trick is how do you recruit those volunteers and use them effectively? And so that might be some conversations we can have in the future.
Mm-hmm.
That's all changed right now too, with the
Exactly.
COVID going on, the way we do it and how many you can get and all those things. And that's being addressed by our attorney's office, and they're weighing on, what the paperwork might look like to sign people up. So it's kind of an ever-changing thing right now.
And I think, and maybe, thinking about what does volunteer look like? I mean, I think in the past, a lot of volunteer has been around events, either events or yard, maintenance projects, fundraising, and getting out into working on fundraising is something that probably hasn't been pursued in the past and might be would be a new area to explore. Talked about under art and culture research, providing a safe kayak entry. Many people on the board had mentioned that it's already a council goal. It's already a department goal. Other than advocating for that and maybe helping, I don't know that we the board members would necessarily have funding sources for that. Presume Mike and Brian look at the different grants and things that are available, as you talked about earlier on that.
Yeah, we're actually moving forward on the not a done deal, but we're moving forward on the kayak down at Memorial. So it's at least making some progress.
Okay. I thought I read something about that in here somewhere, and Mike, are you guys thinking about that kayak? Is that something that, or if you've even got this far, that would attach to the memorial dock? Or almost the way I read it, it almost sounded like it'd be not attached to the memorial dock and be accessed from the bank or something.
I think Dustin's become our dock expert, so I'll leave that with him.
Yeah, so somehow that's become my my field of expertise here. Yeah, so what we're looking at is it's called the Easy Kayak Launch System. And it does indeed attach to the inside of that dock. I think what was being explained in that document is that it's on the, as you walk down that dock plank, it'll be on the left hand or the shore side attached to the dock so that it's protected from anything that's floating down the river that could possibly, rip it off the side of that dock. It's essentially secured to the concrete of the dock with, some holding devices, and then you can set your kayak on it, sit down in it, and then use that there's some grooves cut in it so you can put your paddle in it and basically pull yourself forward out into the water without having to take that giant plunge off the side of Memorial Park's dock. So pretty interesting system. Had some conversations with some other people, and they have one in Tillamook that they recently installed. The company's doing one in Astoria, somewhere else, maybe like Aurora regionally. Like there's some other ones where they're going in similar versions. Oregon Marine Construction is the people who I've been talking to, and that's who's been putting them in these other places. They've had good success with them, so it's an option we're super excited about trying to get installed here in the next 365 days, hopefully.
That'd be nice. Then in the past, the ADA access seemed to be a big hurdle. Are you just looking at putting in a gravel pathway down, or what?
You can go ahead, Brian. You think you got the nuts and bolts on that one?
Yeah, so Jim, on the ADA side, obviously the ultimate would be a driveway down with getting folks closer. But what we're proposing as part of that grant application is a compacted gravel or compacted rock surface that would meet ADA requirements, both from a surfacing and slope perspective. But we'll make that project something that's attainable from a completion perspective without having to go to that nth degree of a paved path. It could be something we circle back to in a later date, but the grant application did call for an ADA pathway as well as the dock.
Awesome, that'd be great. It's nice to see that's moving forward. Okay.
I can also tell you on one of those items there, Jim, under art and culture, where it says provide staff liaison for Kitty Cotta. Well, Erica drew that short straw, so she's got that. And she's already well into that. She's already had 3 or 4 different meetings, and actually talking with the delegation over in Kitty Cotta a couple times via Zoom meetings. And so she's already on that.
Okay, nice. The going back to the email from Brittany that provided some of your comments around the purpose of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. About halfway down, it talks about, says the second and third bullet points are typically in the form of larger scale park development projects that come to the board seeking recommendations that are then passed on to the Development Review Board, who then passes on to City Council. And it also talks about the review and funding of the Community Opportunity Grant twice a year also falls under these bullets, as does board involvement in parks master planning process. I guess I just had a couple of comments or thoughts on that, and that, yeah, the board gets to see the park design reviews before they go to the design review board. But I think in terms of being advocates, the board needs to be more, probably more involved in trying to provide insight or advice or be part of the conversation long before these get to the design review board. Once these designs get, well, I guess not everything goes to the design review board. So an opportunity to have more input onto those things would be good. And then the review and funding of the community opportunity grant. I know the Parks Board has been doing that for a while, but it doesn't really feel like a parks thing to me. Those projects aren't park projects. It feels more like a task that found a home that nobody else wanted to do, which then takes up a lot of our meeting time. That's probably not a solution at the moment, but just my view on that community opportunity grant is I'm not sure that's a Parks Board activity. Okay. Let's move over to and go through the summary that I sent out, and then Brittany sent it back to us today with board comments, or not board comments, excuse me, staff comments. For the board members, does anybody have any questions, comments in regard to the summary I sent out? Anything that maybe what I sent out wasn't, as accurate or complete as it could have been? Just going to pause for a moment, give people a chance to make any comments they want before we kind of walk through this list. Hey, Brian.
Just want to point out one thing that was not mentioned in the we'll cover later, or did we provide an answer to? There was a specific park project that was mentioned for, I'm blanking on which park it was, but a specific park project that was in your comments that you sent out, Jim, that we didn't address on that, but whatever board member brought that up, if you could reach out to staff directly, we can have a further conversation about that particular project.
I think it was Tranquil Park, and I think Nate brought that up.
Yeah, sounds right.
So Nate, I didn't mean to slight you. I just figured that was a conversation. I know staff's interested in art and things that we can do in the park. So I figured that was a better conversation to be had one-on-one with either Dustin or Erica.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, so not hearing anything. The first item was, how can the board be more actionable, have an impact? The board would seem to have actionable goals if they were thought of on a reasonable, attainable scale, such as, and then staff provided some ideas on how to kind of word it that way. And so I thought that was good and helpful. And I was thinking some of the things that we were looking to impact were also already listed in the department goals. I guess just to kind of put some context here. Let's see, looks like somebody is trying to. Brittany, are you adding something there?
Jim, I just tried to share the screen that has this document, so if folks don't have it in front of them, it's easily read here on the screen.
Okay. Just moving some stuff around my screens here so I can see that. Okay, got it. Perfect. So I thought what we would do is kind of walk through these kind of quickly, see if there's any particular comments, and then afterwards, maybe have a discussion around trying to synthesize some board goals. Status of river access. So we've talked about the kayak launch, which is awesome. Actually, you got talking about the ADA. I guess I skipped over some of that today. Any other questions on river access? Brian, at one time we had talked about over on the water treatment plant, they're doing some work and adding some river access over there. Is anything going on with that, or did that die with bond funding?
Now, I guess to clarify, the project itself is moving forward for all the work at the water treatment plant. So that's definitely happening. As part of that project, there is a new river overlook that will be installed. So it'll be an elevated platform that's at ground level, not down on the river. And there are some trails that will get you down to the bank. But as part of that process, there is no, or that project, there is no formalized access to the water.
That's right. Okay, thank you for the clarification on that. A couple of board members had asked about the Community Enhancement Committee and the Parks Advisory Board, and if there was a linkage between the two, and there is not. And I don't think there's any intent for there to be either. A question to Brian and Mike, I guess.
Not to my knowledge. I think if there was any formal link, it could create a conflict of interest in Parks Project being eligible for funding in that. So, I mean, in my personal opinion, which is only my opinion, it's probably good to keep those separate to keep us eligible for project funding.
Okay. Then the Parks Maintenance Program, I guess, Dustin, you're the man there. I guess from a board perspective, is there any particular concerns you have as to how that's going? Funding you're getting?
Actually, I think that we're very fortunate to have a robust funding system for the park maintenance team. Obviously, anytime we try to pull off, large scale project with CIP backing, we're fighting with everybody else in the city for the dollar allotments, and I think we've gotten pretty good shake with those. I think Mike and Brian do a really good job of teeing those up for future development. But day-to-day maintenance, I think the funds are great. I think we're really fortunate to have the expertise and the experience of the team that we have. And hopefully as we kind of turn into spring here and you guys get out and about, you can start to reap some of those visual rewards of what that team has been doing with the funding sources they do have.
Yeah, Jim, if I might also, Dustin's right. And Dustin's probably shortchanging himself. He's doing an awesome job as a supervisor. And of course, he's fortunate to have a great crew. We really do have a good crew, as this whole department. It's a really amazing department to me. But the other thing about it is Dustin and I have been just started to work on, he's probably been working on it a little longer than I have, but started to work on trying to put together more of a roadmap for the next 5 and even 10 years of what might come up, so that maybe when we need funding and it has to go to the budget committee, maybe they're already aware that they have this document and we've already put this on the map for 3 years from now. And it's not like a surprise that something's come up, especially as far as replacing playgrounds, things that are safety issues, or again, infrastructure that might be failing. So we're trying to project a little better.
So working through the parks infrastructure piece is a little bit more time consuming. We're just getting our feet underneath us and trying to kind of prioritize and make some plans and really get some good numbers. But I do have a built out a playground replacement schedule, just an Excel document with age, cost to install, and replacement priority that I can certainly share with the board at a future meeting if something like that, just kind of talking through that document and how that plays out big picture in the community. I'm certainly willing to do that in the future for you guys' for reading enjoyment.
Okay. Mike, about 3 years ago, the manager before Dustin gave a presentation on some new software that they were starting to use to track and their maintenance program. Is that something, are you guys still using that, or did that, I don't know if that was a trial at the time or not.
It was not, I don't know if it was a trial, it was just the beginning of, but it's taken on it's taken off. It's really a great program. If you're talking about Cartograph.
I don't have it in front of me. I just popped back in the brain.
I think that's be the one you're talking about. Again, Dustin might be able to give you a couple sentences on it better what they're doing, but they're tracking pretty much everything they do. So we know like, for instance, Dustin and I were talking today, we know how much time is being spent on cleaning restrooms and picking up trash, for example, because the restroom cleaning, believe it or not, is taken like twice as long because we have to clean it better because of the COVID-19. And so because of that, Dustin can track and see how much time we're spending mowing Memorial Park, like I said, picking up trash, cleaning restrooms, all of that. So I don't know if Dustin wants to throw another 2 cents in there.
Yeah, so that timeline for me, Jim, makes sense. I think that would be cartograph that Todd had brought forward. And I know he was a big proponent of it, and I am as well. I think it has tremendous value. Public Works really has leveraged it well. We have a cartograph liaison and Andy Sheen over at Public Works. It does a ton of stuff for us. And what the goals are for the team, my goal for the team, the department's goal for the team, and the team's goal for themselves is to track their time at about 80%. So we like to see 32 hours plus or minus within a week per teammate accounted for. We understand that number fluctuates depending on what's going on. It's just the way business is done. But that really gives us a holistic look at how we're spending our time. Are we spending the majority of our time mowing? Are we landscaping? And the numbers Mike's speaking to is, we're spending upwards of 25+% on janitorial type tasks, vacuum cleaning, garbages that have been super full because of COVID. People were taking their meals to the park when it was nice. So we've seen an uptick in that. And as a result, I think we've seen a good reaction by our team getting out there and getting those things handled. But it's just something that we're going to have to account for going forward, because I'm not sure if those percentages of janitorial bathroom cleaning tasks are going to go down anytime soon. But yeah, cartograph has been an excellent tool, and we use it regularly to figure out, what we're doing well, where we're maybe losing some time, and kind of how to move forward as a team and be more efficient.
And Jim, just for the board's knowledge, each of the staff people have been trained on cartograph, so they input their own stuff as far as what they did that particular day. And so it's nice that they're all trained on it. They've all bought into it, and that's kind of the way it works. I just wanted the board to know that that's kind of what they do, is the staff people put in what they did, and then we go from there.
Okay, thank you. Item 5 was, can we work on increasing volunteer efforts and what that would look like? Maybe we can circle back to that at the end in terms of what would that look like part. Is the goal of adding a teenager to the board effectively dead? So Mike or Brian, thanks for laying out what it would take to move that forward. On the consideration for equity inclusion comes up. So thanks for providing the good list of resources and information on that. I personally am not trying to reinvent this wheel. Been in a lot of those conversations. It's a tough one to nail down. Would like to explore partnering with local schools to create programs, environmental awareness that utilize the parks. And Mike, maybe this is a part where you or Eric could maybe talk a little bit about anything, just your experience of trying to work through these type of things with the school and the challenges that may or may not be there.
So I can chime in a little bit. So I was actually a little bit confused on what this bullet point was really thinking of here, who the person behind it was really thinking. So we are happy to partner with the school at any time if they have a program that they think would work in one of our parks. We can always, provide them a space in our parks to do that, whether that's, a facility or just letting them, having them email us saying we're going to be here at this time and we're going to need A, B, and C. Like those things we can definitely do. As far as like actual programming goes, this is where it got a little fuzzy for me. So like we don't have a staff on hand really that has the time to be running programming. We don't do a lot of in-house programming. It's something that we would hire out for. So for example, like we've done programs about like environmental type programs through like Mad Science, but it's more as a camp sort of, setup versus actual class curriculum. Because working I could see some potential hurdles actually working with a, environmental science teacher in the middle school. They've got their curriculum planned out like so far, I feel like ahead of schedule, that trying to sort of figure out how we would fit into that other than providing the space for it could be challenging. So those are my thoughts. But we have tried, we're running a worm composting class here soon. We've tried other programming at the community garden. I've done a few, videos on banana slugs and things like that that are available. So yeah, I'd be interested in hearing kind of more ideas on that, but that's kind of my stance at this point.
Jennifer, could you maybe give just a little bit more insight as to what you were possibly thinking here?
Yeah, what I was thinking is really centering around kids that are perhaps in the graduating class of a middle school or in the graduating class of a high school, and having the class themselves as a whole adopt some kind of program for the parks so that they could give back and they themselves make an impact in terms of feeling like they're making a difference. So the whole idea would be, like that nature trail that was brought up earlier. Perhaps they could say, okay, this is what we want to give and work on it all year long, partner up with the city to go ahead and work on this project. It would take involvement on the school's part and on the parks part as well. But, perhaps working with a company to fundraise and develop some kind of solar powered bathroom, something like that. Each class could have a project that they vote on and then they work on the entire year, so that at the end of the day, I think these kids would then feel like they're making a difference in terms of leaving a legacy, as well as making a difference when we're talking about climate change.
So you're thinking something similar to how like I don't know how many art classes it was, if it was at the high school, that did the bus wrap for the smart bus. So something where they can their work come to fruition, but make it park style.
Yes, and have it be, a year-long program, and have it like at the middle school level, ideally, because I want to get more kids involved in participating in park district events and using the park system that we have, and then also empowering them by the same token.
I think we can definitely take that into consideration, and if you ever want to chat more offline about it, I'm willing to hear your ideas.
Okay, I'd love to do that. Thanks.
All right, so I try to take notes, read, and commandeer all at the same time here. Number 9 was getting an update on how the grants that were approved are being spent. So thank you for the update on that. It looks like on the equity and inclusion, so they've just finalized the licensing terms and start outreach here pretty quick. When you talked with them, Brian, they get a sense of were they feeling optimistic and hopeful, or pessimistic and this is harder than we thought?
No, I think where they were at, I know the excitement is still there. The members of that We Are Wilsonville are part of the larger kind of equity inclusion programs within the city as a whole. In speaking with the representative, it was more a question of, they were looking at 2 different packages, if we remember, and then they settled on one, and the rep changed. So there was some question on how many licenses they could have and the vision of how they could share them. But they worked through those details and we're waiting on that in writing. And then they were ready to move forward. So my impression is that they still feel like they're on track, and that will be a program that the community sees here shortly.
Okay, thank you. Item 10 was talking about the two projects for the Memorial Park bathroom and Boones Ferry Playground. Thanks for the update there. I was a little surprised to see that the bathroom cost had basically doubled, but it didn't include the concession, so that was surprising.
Is there a way that you can that we ever get to see a breakdown of how that money is spent of the $500,000 that's allocated to a bathroom?
Talking about like a detailed construction cost?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think we typically see that, no.
I'm sure we could give that to you in a meeting sometime, like after we've got a firm quote or a firm bid down the line, and kind of tell you where the spread is, how much is labor and how much is materials and those kind of things. I'm sure we could probably provide that for you down the road.
And then 13 and 14, 15, 16, they all kind of go together, and they all kind of go under the concept of figuring out what actually finally makes it into the budget and what gets prioritized for that. As I talked about in here a little bit, mainly using these as an examples for the rest of the board, is that we have the master plans, and they list literally hundreds of projects, as I mentioned earlier. We had the Park Bond Committee, which prioritized certain projects. At the end of the day, the recommendation was not prioritized. There was one work session in the middle that kind of gave an indication of some priority that would be done. And then on the bond projects, many items were grouped into individual pieces. So when you look here at the Memorial Park bathrooms or the kayaks, those were probably part of some other project grouping in the bond. But this was kind of what I was talking about earlier, where I think for the board, this is the time of year when the Parks Department is starting to put together their budget to take to the budget committee in, what is that, May-ish? And so this is our opportunity to try to advocate for if for whatever reason what the Parks Department is advocating for, this would be our opportunity to say, well, that's great, but here's some other things to think about. And for me, this is one of the more impactful areas where we can try to start to have some influence or advice there, or to understand why these particular projects were chosen out of the many projects that were there. And I think, when I look at things like, how do you influence, I brought up the example of skateboarding because that's the one I'm most familiar with. For many years, the city council had a goal of creating skate spots, little, 500 square foot spots that might have a little skate feature on it. And 15 years later, none of those skate spots have ever been built. So what do you got to do? So if you're a board member and you're advocating for the community for whether it's a skate spot or a basketball hoop or some other new type of park feature, how do you get into the front end of the design process or the planning process to get those items considered? For example, if we look over at Boones Ferry Park over the last year, those new trails have been paved over there. What probably could have been done pretty simply at the same time was along those new paved trails is to put in some little roller type items that would be a lot of fun on a skateboard or a scooter or rollerblades. It wouldn't be part of the main trail, it'd be right beside the trail, but you'd create these little spots where a kid or an adult could take their almost any wheeled vehicle and do something more fun than ride on flat ground. And where do you get those ideas in?
Well, good question, Jim. I think one, maybe we need to be more aware of that idea when future things come up that really are not in maybe our wheelhouse, but we could add on to or something like that. And again, maybe you guys bring in those ideas to us and we bring them forward. I don't know, Brian, if you got a better answer than that.
Well, I think the answer I would rely on would be that we went through the master planning process for Boones Ferry Park. And through that process, for better or for worse, there was no skate elements called out as part of that plan. So when the trail was moving forward, and that trail project was actually prior to Boones Ferry Park's master plan, just from a part of a trail connectivity project. But yeah, I think the master plan piece is kind of when we start to get those ideas rolling. It's not to say that that's the be all end all, but I think that's definitely the first step. If we miss that window, then I think having those conversations as we gear up to projects, as Mike mentioned, and hearing from the board what's a possibility, we can definitely to look at that. But I think the master plans for the various parks are kind of our guiding starting point as to what a project is going to be and what amenities will be in those parks.
Jim, this is Jeff.
Yeah.
I guess the question would be to Mike or Brian or to yourself. Does each annual year's budget have a timeline? So a chronicle timeline piece, right? That says, here's what we do by X date. Wouldn't we add a component to the timeline that says recommendations for new features?
Yeah, basically, Jeff, we do a budget every year. It's an annual budget and it's on a fiscal year. So it starts July 1 and obviously ends June 30th. And like Jim alluded to a minute ago, basically we're working on it now. And then we start meeting with administrators and everybody else probably within the next couple of weeks. And then we go from there to the budget committee. And as far as projects go, it's a pretty involved process because every department, I don't know if you want to call it a wish list, and it's not even a wish list anymore. Now it's more of a, because we've been tasked to, don't spend very much money because again, revenues are what they are. It's more of a necessity kind of instead of a wish list. But every department puts in those what we call ad packages into the pile that goes to the city administrators, and you might get a tenth of those paid for. I don't know what the exact figure is, but everybody's asking for something, whether it's more staffing because they're short, whether it's some kind of infrastructure like we're looking for. There's a variety of things that people ask for, and of course, not everybody's going to get what they ask for.
Absolutely. I guess what I was referring to is more of a process, something to add to the process, that the window of time, for example, in December and January, here's your opportunity to make recommendations before we go on to the next phase, which is pare those recommendations down. So just something that was thrown out maybe as a reminder to us or to others that, do you have any recommendations for the upcoming budget?
Yeah, your time frame is probably right. Your time frame of December, I would say no later than mid-January, but your timing that you just threw out there, Jeff, is probably right on.
Okay. And I think the last item on that, those all kind of ran together. Those last few all talked about really around prioritizing and how to decide what would be funded and what's not. Okay. Jeff, do you want to talk a little bit about, I know we're trying to get down here by 5:30. You had expressed some interest on volunteerism, and I just wanted to give you a minute to talk, if you have any additional thoughts on what you're thinking about there, if it's anything beyond what the Parks Department is currently envisioning.
Well, I guess conceptually, there's a lot of folks in this city. We're coming up on almost 30,000 folks in this city, right? There's a lot of volunteer labor on the sidelines. I had a sidebar with Dustin, and Dustin, thanks for your time, man. But I'm not looking to build new parks with these volunteer efforts, but there's a lot of, I walk the parks a lot and there's a lot of small maintenance things that, for instance, a picnic table that has a hole in it, a park bench that could be sanded down, a trail that could be raked and re-graveled. A lot of those things, to me, I think you could probably find some people in the community that wanted to get out, and in this midst of COVID, we can wear a mask and stand 6 feet apart and still swing a rake or a shovel. And just get people out in the parks, getting involved and taking some pride and ownership in their own park system. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but I just think there's some little things like that that we could roust up some interest in the community in doing. Maintaining what we have instead of building new.
Brian, do you want to scroll up to that bullet point? I think it was number 5, maybe, on volunteerism. Look at it really quick and just make sure we get. Yeah, so what the teams really worked through here and put in front of the EOC is a work week to come in April, which is going to pair with what Erica right now is calling a spring fling. But I think she's also open to other awesome Earth Day names if you guys have them. And this would be an opportunity to, instead of a work day, we would sign up for, there'd be multiple days, 6 days across 7 different timelines, 5 or 6 different parks, and a handful of activities like you just talked about, bark dust, rough chips, ivy, picnic table painting, all of those things. But then on top of that, we've had some interest from the Villablaw community specifically in having a work day in the fall around those chain of parks up there, which we would try to implement. But the one that we're working on currently is an ad hoc volunteer where you would be able to go in through some registration portal and register for volunteer opportunities a couple of weeks out, because the biggest logistical piece for the team is ensuring that what the volunteers want to do, those resources are there. Right. It doesn't, if we have a picnic table that needs to be repaired and say Jeff is the one who expressed interest in repairing it, it doesn't do Jeff any good if we don't have the resources there for him to make that repair or paint that table or fix that bark area or regrade that trail. So what needs to happen better on our end once we kind of clear COVID here a little bit is implementing those resources in a way that's practical and timely for the team, but also beneficial for the volunteers. So we're working on it. Eric has put together a couple of really great documents that have, flown through the EOC's volunteer process. We're just waiting on a few, legal documents and some terms around COVID and some other things. But it's definitely something that, I think we are close on. And I think as a general team, and I guess I'm going to speak out for everybody here, is we'll take all the help we can get when we can get it. It's just a matter of, if that's helping Erica run an event, movies in the park, things like that. There's always, opportunities besides just maintenance, right? That's the easy piece. It's easy to call out. It's big picture. It's easy to see, but I know Erica's always looking for help with events. There's, volunteer opportunities there, both with the board and the community, I think. And maybe Erica and Mike and Brian have something else to kind of tag onto that, but we're driving at it. It was a big, hurdle with COVID. And I think we're kind of starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel as to how we might pull some of these things off in the not too near future.
And just my 2 cents, I think that, again, we don't want to blame everything on the pandemic because, everybody seems to do that. But it is true that we pretty much had to reinvent everything. I've been in this field for 40 years and I've never seen where you had to do virtual things like Erica's pulling off and reworking your registration so you can even have volunteers and how that would work. It's been a process, but we're getting there. Like Dustin said, we have some things planned, and I think that was mainly Erica and Dustin kind of put those together for those work weeks. And so we're throwing some stuff together, and we think it's going to work. And then hopefully it'll just grow from there.
And we'd love to have you guys advocate those workday events when they get lined out and registration opens up. We'd love to have you guys be the eyes, ears, and social sounding board behind it to get people to sign up. I think there's, what is there, like 200 slots, Erica, tentatively right now. We'd love to fill them all up and be able to go back and ask for more from the EOC. Figure out ways to get more people in. So more to come.
All right, thank you. So as we think about goals for this year, Kind of want to open the floor up a little bit to see if folks think we need some specific goals that are, for the board, or do we look at the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board duties and responsibilities, take a look at what that list says, the items for us to do in terms of serving as a sounding board, recommending policy, advocating, planning for future parks and rec ideas, partnered up with the Parks Department goals, which seem to cover many of the items that the board members are expressed interest in. If we look at those two documents together, does that basically cover what we're trying to achieve, our goals and objectives? Or would folks like to see a sort of a separate list like we drafted in 2020? And in a few minutes, I'm going to start putting people on the hot seat.
And I'll just clarify for the board, there is no requirement that you have these goals. This was something that was developed a number of years back that the board felt was important to kind of drive some of the work they were doing and what their purpose was. But I think to Jim's point, there are goals set out in various other documents. So if you just choose to support those, that's okay. The end goal tonight does not require you to create goals if the board does not feel that that is necessary to move forward.
And I thank you, Brian. That's helpful. And I'd also say that if we don't make a specific list today, but 2 months down the road, something changes, there's a specific item that gains interest or traction that's not already being worked on, there's nothing to say we can't add it at that point in time. It's not today's the day, the only day. Well, Jeff, I'm going to pick on you first.
As far as the specific goal that I have, or that I have for the team, just
maybe talk about any specific goal you have and whether that needs to be memorialized beyond the Parks and Rec advisory duties and the goals of the Parks Department as already listed.
I think there needs to be goals. They need to be simple and obtainable within the framework of what we're all supposed to be doing here, right? So for me, I've already reiterated my personal goal is being involved, not just being I use my words carefully here. I like to be involved in action items, right? So for me, volunteer and maintenance efforts would be key, and being more of an advocate for that. So when these work days, when we do get authorization to have volunteer efforts or events, I'd love to be deputized and go out and find the folks to man those volunteer efforts.
Okay, so an actionable goal around that would look like, getting 80% board participation in volunteer efforts, or something along that line.
Yeah, just right now we have almost zero. So let's put a goal in place to get some involved. And then when we bust out of this COVID and we don't have limitations on people working close together or in any capacity, then we have a plan instead of developing the plan once we get, out of the COVID situation.
Board members, I think Jeff hit on what we talked about as staff too. We talked about as staff, and we talked about tangible goals, which is what Jeff's talking about, like things you can actually attain. And like I said, they're tangible goals. And we thought that was a great idea. Again, we're not setting your goals, but we thought that'd be a good thing for the board maybe to concentrate on.
Yeah. The one thing I've struggled with at times is how to turn some of these items into truly tangible goals that we can actually control. Participation in volunteer activities is something we can control. Advocating for a new feature program, you can advocate for. You can't necessarily make it happen. we control our volunteer hours. All right. So Jeff, I just kind of wrote down, maybe we have a goal that says, 80% of board members participate in the events that come up through the year.
That's fair. Yeah.
All right. Nathan? What's happening on your side?
I think personally, we'd probably be fine without written goals. I know for myself, at least, committing to working specific days on whether, the city determines a work day is on the 24th of the month or whatever. I know I have a career outside of the advisory board committee that, unfortunately I have to take care of before I can be involved in volunteer work. So I would hate to be a negative percentage. I do what I can in my off time as far as, cleanup efforts and volunteer work. I would just hate to, scrutinize that number if I wasn't able to attend a specific work day or event.
Got it. Yeah, and there are multiple events. Well, typically there's multiple events through the year, whether it's, something at Halloween or the fall festival, or there's more than one opportunity. Okay. Let's see. Daniel?
Jim, could I clarify one thing? When we
Yeah.
talk about involvement, doesn't necessarily have to be physical.
I see you broke up. I didn't hear you.
When we talk about involvement, right, in volunteer efforts, doesn't mean you have to physically be there involved in that workday effort. But if you could make a phone call, or you could print some flyers, or walk your neighborhood and put a bunch of flyers on some doors.
Good point.
Yeah, it's not necessarily your physical attendance at the workday, right, that we're talking.
There's more than one way to participate. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good point. Daniel?
I think that I'm pretty much supportive of whatever everybody else likes. If you want to be involved, I think there's room for that. I think, my personal thing is I feel like my interest is more advisory. I think kind of analytical, and does this make sense? But I see the absolute point and power of getting involved physically. So I think there's room for all those kind of things. I think where I kind of struggled, we talked about this last time, and we obviously parked it for this meeting, but it was like I kind of struggled because it's like the whole pandemic thing has kind of thrown things for a loop. So it's hard to even kind of think beyond it in a way, but and not create expectations you can't live up to. But part of me feels like we're on the precipice of like overcoming something, and wouldn't it be a great use of time to actually think about what is the pent up demand that exists for doing things? Because that's all I think about, when I'm with my kids. Like, I can't wait till this thing is over because we're just going to go nuts. We're going to go to Legoland. We're going to go this and this and this. Maybe that's a good use of staff time that's low cost and whatever, is to think about and kind of anticipate what is the demand that's going to happen when people can run around maskless and do things. I don't know. I mean, I think that's something to do.
Okay. Dahi?
Well, as a listener, I just have any thought in terms of this.
Dahi, can you speak up a little louder?
Okay, I'll get a screen. How about now? Does it work better?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. I think when you and I talked, and the things I mentioned to you, I kind of very happy to see they're all listed here and they're covered. So personally, I'm very flexible if there's something, physically participate or something with virtually participate, I'm all open for that. While listening to here, I had a thought. I just want to throw it out, see what people think. There are a lot of information that the cities and departments' website. However, that means, as a resident of the city, I have to go there to look for it. Maybe one thing we can do is, work with the staff members, and if there is that Erica post like 200 virtual classes, something like that. This actually is news to me. I guess I wasn't paying attention. Work classes, I was not looking for them. And there are a couple of Facebook groups, like Belvoir has one group, and there's another one, something called a Wilsonville Community. Maybe either the staff members can regularly post those things at a website, those groups, or pass on to board members who kind of post those information. That kind of just sort of reach out, to the community.
I'm not sure I caught all that exactly. Dahi, were you basically saying looking for ways to get parks program and information, other ways to get parks program and information out to the community?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and Dahe, I think you're right on the money there. For better or for worse, we're not a great PR marketing agency all the time. And as much as we try and get our words out, we always find there's people in the community that don't know something, and it's surprising. But I think your comment to, anytime, we would love for the board, anytime you see a Facebook event posted or anytime there's a tweet that goes out, if you're able to share that or retweet it or whatever it is, we would welcome any additional marketing or PR from that perspective.
We,
Maybe that something kind of like well, I don't use Twitter, so that part's on to me. But maybe if you have some like everything come up a class and just throw out an email to the more board members, and I'm sure as far as I'm concerned, I'm more than happy to just post on the group, what Facebook groups I belong to, and other people maybe belong to other groups, they can post it. That'll be something at least I can do.
Okay.
I would encourage everyone, if you have Facebook and or Instagram, I would encourage you to follow both our Facebook page and our Instagram page, and I can send you links to those. That is like my major outlet, that's where we're putting our information right now, is on those two kind of portals. But also, like, for example, Dahi, I know that from Facebook that you're into like nature photography and things like that. So if you ever, took a picture of one of our parks and wanted to share that, we would be so happy to put that up, on our profiles too. So kind of, working any of that stuff. If you guys, Nate, if he catches a picture, fishing on the dock, or if someone's going for a run and snaps a nice picture, like, you are always welcome to send me those. And that can kind of be, so-and-so parks board member was in the park, on a nice jog this morning. Here's a picture of their jog in Memorial Park. Like, those are things that we would love to cross promote. And I can try to do better on getting you guys kind of info about events ahead of time, so that you can help promote those too. That would be great.
That's good. I'll do that.
Jennifer, I think you're Jennifer.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Can you hear me okay? All right. Yes, I definitely believe that we need to have goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely, need to be held accountable. I'd love to take on that project. Go ahead and get the schools involved in the park and rec department and make a difference that way. I do think that a follow-up, just email to everybody and reciting the goals in terms of the projects and what we do need to get accomplished this fiscal year would be very important.
So what would that, do you have an idea what that would look like in your head at the moment?
You know, implementing the projects that are currently way, making sure that the Kayak project launch gets launched. You know, taking on additional volunteerism, incorporating the community more. You know, and the project that I mentioned earlier, those would be some of the agenda items that I believe would be able to be accomplished this year.
Okay. Oh, I'd probably said, why don't you and I can work offline to try to frame those up in a actionable fashion, and then we can bring that at our next meeting.
Okay. Okay. I apologize. I do have another meeting starting, and so I do need to leave.
Okay. I'll contact you offline.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, Jennifer.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, so I will work offline with Jennifer to see if we can take a couple of these items we talked about today and phrase them as more actionable items and bring that to our next meeting. And I think that's all I have. Any last comments, questions, suggestions from anyone?
I got one.
Yes, Mike.
I just want to thank Brittany for all the work she's done putting this together. She's the one throwing all you guys the info and getting it all together and getting it on time, and then she sits there all silent. But yeah, she's done a great job putting this together. So I just want to make sure she gets a little bit of credit for that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brittany.
Thanks.
Okay. And maybe just as a side note to end on, I'm not sure if this is a Brian or Dustin question, whoever's the master of the doc knowledge currently, just for the board education and my memory again. I was thinking that at some point that the dock belongs to like the Oregon State Marine Board or somebody, and at some point it reverts to ownership by Wilsonville or something. Can you just maybe re-educate us on that?
So unless Brian's got better knowledge than my records retention finding on this topic, in 1996, an agreement was struck up with the Oregon Marine Board to make that a dock that they funded on a yearly basis with some monies, and that was a 20-year agreement. So in 2016, that ended, and that then shifted that from a boat tie-up access point to a general use dock. And so we've spent the last 5 years kind of wrapping our heads around what that means and trying to get that kayak access and some things like that weren't possible before because we were reliant on some of that Marine Board funding to maintain and upkeep that dock, is my understanding.
All right, perfect, thank you. That's what I was wondering. I couldn't remember when that took over. All right.
I had a question.
Yes.
In reference to when you suggested rolling cement in the parks, and then it was also suggested fixing holes in the picnic tables and stuff. If we weren't advisory board members and I was just a local citizen, what is the platform I would use to suggest my own idea of that I think something is wrong with the park, or something that I think could be improved upon in a development?
I think there'd be two items, and then Mike, please correct me or expand. One is, as a private citizen, you could come to a Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting and provide citizen input at the meeting. Another would be to contact the Parks and Rec department, either on the phone or set up a meeting or write a letter. Those would be the two primary that I would think of. Mike, you're probably the expert here.
I don't think I'm an expert on anything here, Jim, but variety of ways. Yeah, email us, call us. If it's a park issue, get Dustin's number. He's more than welcome to talk to people, work things out. I mean, just a multitude of ways. We have CRMs that you can put in through City Hall, as far as it's called a CRM. Go online, you can figure out how to do that. That goes throughout the whole city, and it actually goes into City Hall, and then they kind of give it to whatever department or individual would be in charge of that. And then they track, the progress, if it's getting done timely and if it's being done correctly, if we've responded, those kind of things. So there's a multitude of different ways.
Mike, what's a CRM?
Oh gosh, what is Brian, help me, what's that?
Community information request or something? No.
Citizen request module.
Yes.
Oh my
thank you.
gosh.
But I'm gonna let Dustin speak to a little bit. He's been brainstorming on some ideas on better ways to, Nate, exactly what you're speaking of. How do we grasp from the community, and then on the back end of that, be able to track it? So Dustin, can you speak to that just briefly?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think big picture, what we do across the board, especially, obviously it's easy to see that our rec department is a customer service entity. But my takeaway and my feeling after conversations with the community and the team is that our parks maintenance team is just a customer service entity that happens to take care of turf and grass and green spaces. So what we've worked to implement, will hopefully get finalized and implemented at the turn of the fiscal year, is a version of parks concerns at ci.wilsonville.or.us, or more preferably a textable number that generates an email that park maintenance teammates from anything like what we'd implement at first, like in bathroom areas where maybe it's a plugged toilet, or a reservation shelter that has garbage cans that are full. It may be that simple, those things that we can easily respond to, but eventually, are able to elevate that to something that all park users are comfortable and familiar with. And they could, suggest things like, this plant in this park is dying, or this tree has been dead and tipped over forever. We manage 250 plus acres as a parks maintenance team of 7. And there's things we miss. I'm sure every day there's something that one of you see that we miss. And I am always open for a conversation to guide that team to those issues and try to make the quickest and swiftest resolution. And by streamlining that away from the CRM process, which sounds like nobody knew about, into a signage that's visible in these parks where people can respond to it immediately when they see an issue, I think we'll see a lot better turnaround on our response to problems, and hopefully a lot less issues in the future. And I owe you an email back, Nate, on the Boonesbury trash can still. I've been working a few things. I need a spot for it. So we'll talk offline.
Thank you, Dustin.
Thank you.
All right. Any last comments before we bring the meeting to a close?
Jim, I had one quick one for Dustin. Do we have a certified arborist on staff? Is that a hired out component, or?
So when we have arborist issues, especially tree hazard analysis, we hire a third-party arborist. As a city, just from a liability standpoint, there's several that we use. Some of the tree services we have them on their team. If we have an issue where we're going to hire a tree service to do something and we need an arborist, we look to hire them out independently. Prior to this, there was an arborist on the public works team who has since retired, and our newest parks maintenance team member, Chris Delk, has his arborist certificate. He's not tree hazard analysis certified yet. And also our maintenance lead supervisor, Tommy Reeder, is in the process of studying for and securing his arborist license. So we have some incredible plant-minded people. And yes, the short answer is yes. The long answer is the one I gave you.
And the reason I asked that is the trail, the old growth forest trail, for lack of a better word, the one that goes through Memorial along the river.
Yep.
I'm seeing some bug and or ivy and or things going on with some of those old growth trees that might want to be looked at?
Yeah, so we've noticed across the river there where we put in that new stub of trail behind the dog park, a lot of those cedars that were smaller in stature were dominated by some bugs, basically, inside outed them and killed them. And in talks with some of our tree companies, we're just losing trees because of the changing climate, lack of rain, warmer weather, whatever you want to call it. We're losing some of those old growth trees. Obviously, English ivy is a giant concern, and that's something that we're going to look to get under control in a few ways. It's persistent. But if you have a couple of spots in particular that you're speaking to, Jeff, I can certainly get somebody out there to look at it. We can kind
Yeah, I'll
of
map out a couple of spots and take a couple of photos. There's about 3,000 trees in that little
Yeah.
forest along the river there, and it's just gorgeous. I'd hate to see
and the
damage happen.
yeah, and the key for us is that we're going to lose those trees one way or the other, whether we're alive to see it or not. Those trees won't last forever. So the goal of the maintenance team here is to address those issues and also get some new ones started in the under canopy. It probably won't get pulled off this year with work week, but some native Doug fir tree planting events would be something that we're definitely looking to get going here in the future as well. So
Thank you.
Anything you got, I'll take. Thanks.
All right. Any other last comments? If not, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks everybody for your participation and time, and hopefully you don't get snowed in someplace that you don't want to be. All right, take care.
Stay safe, everyone.
Bye.